Yes, I was going on to explain how religion can be useful to science as a moral compass. Before I go on to that, though, just wanted to mention a few things that I meant to say or said incorrectly before. One of the things I mentioned is both the difference between the two dimensions, the physical and the spiritual, and that Persinger showed that the right brain is in contact with the non-physical, and the left with the left brain, with the physical. Of course, the brain is much more complex than that, but it's the most complex thing in the universe. But still, it seems to be if the left shuts down, the right uh, can experience the non-physical or the spiritual or the mind. And I mentioned his experiment, but also other people, and these have been documented as well, near-death experiences, where they experience the same sort of phenomena. And it doesn't matter what religion they have, what culture they come from, what they speak, what language they speak, when and where. They all seem to have that same common phenomenon. For instance, there was a excuse me, an Australian. He was training for the Olympics. Cyclist. He was hit, and he was cycling up a mountain, and he was hit by a large vehicle and knocked out the left side of his body. He had to undergo several operations where he had a lot of out-of-body experiences. And he didn't want to come back because it was so great. No pain. It felt great. And, religious experiences as well. They have exaltations, particularly the evangelical group meet together. So this is why I said that there's some evidence, if you want to call it that there are the different two domains. Now the other thing that I didn't mention is that, remember I said that for the first 380,000 years, photons, protons, electrons were all floating around and so dense they couldn't escape. And I mentioned that the proton and electron escaped and became hydrogen. I could have also mentioned that the photon escaped at that time too. And you're still being hit by photons of light from that time. It's now called the microwave background radiation. And 3% of the static you get in an old TV with an aerial, or 3% in an AM radio, is from that time. It's stretched out to be microwaves now, and it's very cold. It's 3 degrees above absolute zero, around minus 270 degrees centigrade. And also then 65 million years ago, where I had a pause, I also wanted to continue and say yes, that the dinosaurs then became extinct because they were cold-blooded and they needed the sunlight in order to move around. So when they became extinct, okay, the mammals were able to come out in the daytime and proliferated. Now another event happened 10 million years ago that is also significant. I mean, 65 million years ago was significant too, but not so good for dinosaurs, but good for you, because you might not, if that hadn't happened, you might not be here. The same 10 million years ago, if you recall, that during the age of the dinosaurs, the planets split up into the more or less the location they are now. Except that before 10 million years ago, so North America and South America were apart. They weren't joined together. But when they joined at that time, they changed the ocean currents And so the climate of Africa changed. And that meant it could no longer support the number of trees it did before. So the number of grasslands or savanna area grew up. And some of the animals in the trees said, well, it's getting crowded up here. Maybe I'll try my luck on the in the grassland. And then, as luck would have it, they probably got hit by some cosmic radiation that got through and knocked out some of changed their DNA. And those that survived were mutated, and some of the ones that survived were the ones that were best suited to live on the grasslands. And they passed on their DNA to their offspring, and so on, until it came down to you. So then I started to go on to explain the number of steps that had to happen before you could get here. So that you could then count yourself as a mutant because of the change in your DNA that allowed you to come where you are now. Now, maybe some of the mutants wouldn't have survived. Maybe if they had two heads or something like that. Well, maybe to have two brains would be better than one. Well, you can ask an octopus, because they have 9 brains. They have 8 in their arms and 1 in their head. But nevertheless, we went through a lot of different steps for you to be here. And as I say, I'm going to go over some of the steps and when I went on from there, I went on to explain the number of steps.